Are you wondering how to break the stigma around mental health issues and the impact that it's having on our African American and other disenfranchised communities? If you are, join us, your hosts, Marincia Henson, Lucretia Lee, and Walanda Johnson on our Mindful Moments mental health radio show every second and fourth Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, as we dive into a mindful dialogue to empower, inform, and bring awareness to the positive impact of mental health wellness.
Good evening, everyone. I am one of your hosts, Marincia Henson, and I am an associate clinical social worker here in San Diego. I provide therapeutic and social services for children, adolescents, and adults diagnosed with mental health disorders, as well as intellectual developmental disabilities here in San Diego.
How you doing? My name is Lucretia Lee. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I presently work in one of the detention facilities here in San Diego. It's an all-male facility, and I assess for suicide ideation.
And I am Walanda Johnson, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist who is working also in private practice, providing teletherapy for California residents, even though I live on the East Coast.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining our episode this evening. For this episode, we will have a mindful moment discussion around what has COVID-19 stripped from you in all areas of our lives. We will also love to hear from you all. So please jot down any questions, comments. So just feel free just to jot down again your comments or anything that you would like to share during this dialogue in the Facebook live stream comment section. So we would love to hear from you as well. Mm-hmm. So again, we will be diving into this discussion, and then at the end, we will also be giving out helpful tips of how everyone can try to manage their mental health during this COVID pandemic.
Hi, I just want to give a precursor to those who have been adversely affected by COVID-19 pandemic. We don't want to make a light of any loss and tragedies that anybody's experienced. Mm-hmm. What we want to do is acknowledge the fact that those who are listening and looking in, we're surviving, we're here. And so we want to talk about some adverse effects that this pandemic has had on us and our families, as well as some successes and triumphs. So for me in particular, I am considered a first responder working in a detention facility. And so as many might think, leaving my home at least 5 days a week, going into a closed facility, a jail, the concerns that I had, if someone catches it, is it going to go throughout the jail? Is it going to adversely affect me? And am I going to bring that home to my loved ones? And so, although many people were able to work from home, like they shut down the courts. Myself and my coworkers, clinicians and nurses alike, we had to go into the jails. The protective equipment that they provided us was minimal in the beginning, which was another issue. But then they began to get a supply of resources. So that was a challenge, and I'm very grateful that I have yet to contract COVID-19. Another thing too was when school shut down, I had to leave my child at home. Now she is a young teen, that's my baby, and we don't leave her at home. And so that was a big deal. And so trying to take time off, I'm a co-parent. It required her dad who's already very actively involved, but to be even more involved, coming over to the house and spending time with her while she's in school. Her going over to his house even more so than she would normally go over there. Called on loved ones to do transportation, drive-by birthday parties I'm not able to go to because I'm at work. Loved ones and family members, took her on drive-bys. And those are just some of the challenges. And just a couple of the triumphs and successes. Save money. I'm doing my hair. So right. I out. Hey, went back to the barber, had to shave it off the way I like it. And I'm saving a lot of money, putting my own color in. You know what I mean? And so far, so good, knock on wood. It's pretty big things, getting pretty proficient with the eyebrows. Just Just having to, right?
Pedicures at home, manicures at home. I know I've had spa dates at home, like doing my own hair till maybe a month ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah.
A lot of doors.
Yeah, just stepping it up.
Right.
Ladies, want to share some of your?
Question for you, Walanda. How was it in the beginning when it came to the actual inmates responding to COVID in the beginning? Like, what was their thoughts? What was their mindset? Were they actually like abiding by wearing their masks? Like, what was that looking like in jail when it came to the prisoners and how they were responding to it?
I first want to go back. So because everything was changing and changing so rapidly, like every other day, every day I would go to work and it'd be something totally different.
Okay.
You know, so a lot of time there's a lot of recidivism. Inmates are coming in and out of jail, and they know how the jail is supposed to work.
Yeah.
So any deviations, they're questioning, like, what's going on? I shouldn't be on that particular module. I should be here. So they really started working with the inmates from the jump, isolating people, and they're questioning. And some people are acting out because they don't know why they're on this particular floor, because this floor is known for this particular thing. And so it was a lot of that. And so for me, when I would deal with them, I just educate, like, this COVID is going on, right? This is going on.
This COVID.
So,
this COVID.
Yeah, this COVID. I'm trying to make them laugh. I'm like, so yeah, you've been going in and out of jail for 20 years, but this is unprecedented. Work with this, And so then they got to the point where they know in order to move or to get their privileges or what have you, they need to have on their face coverings. And if they didn't, they would miss out on things. And so I would have to say pretty darn compliant, pretty overall. Yeah.
And I think you would even agree with me how important that is, because again, you brought up a very good point, is that, individuals that go to jail, they're used to that schedule, they're used to that routine, they're used to that consistency. And that's what they're used to. That's what keeps them aligned. And like you said, like if the workers, whether you're a therapist, a psychiatrist, or correctional officers in jail, if you're not doing your part as a worker, it's going to affect the inmates. It's going to affect their mental state. So I could definitely see how, their mental state when it came to like their anxiety would rise, because at the end of the day, they're still human, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, hats off to you all of not understanding what's going on, but at the same time, you still have to make sure that nobody shows it to keep that, consistency and schedule as best as possible.
Absolutely.
If I can share something a little bit around the lines in the sense of, everybody knows I work with children and adults with mental health issues as well as intellectual disabilities such as autism. So how we were affected in my population doing therapy and social services is, when you have a child, example, that is autistic, he's used to his regimen. He's used to waking up at a certain time, getting on the bus at a certain time, coming home at a certain time. And if anybody that knows anyone, or if you have a child with autism, you're going to know that any type of change, even just slightly, it's going to affect them. So with our population, again, we are a crisis team as well. So, we really had to be hands-on of, changing those crisis plans. We had to make sure that the numbers were there, that, PERT was going to be on our team, especially more than ever, of understanding we're going to see a rise in behaviors, whether it's verbally or aggressively, because of these changes. On top of helping the parents to see, look, a lot of these services through Regional Center, they're not open. You know what I mean? So again, it's like we're trying to help, and it's a little bit better now because things are opening up. But, before, it's like we can't get into the homes. Services are not, going into the home, whether you're ABA, therapy, or you're having OT or speech. So I was like, okay, well, how can we help these families or these adults that are used to going to adult day program, are used to going to school or whatever, with just the tools that we have of being on the phone and just through Zoom. So that was a challenge for us, knowing that the services that these families rely on religiously are not active. They're not going on. So that was just one of, a main stress for us as an employee is really trying to work as a team, collaborating, coming up with ideas of how we can do it over Zoom and over the phone.
Well,
Mhm.
I can imagine how difficult that is, Marincia, because ABA is so, I mean, not hands-on, like technically hands-on, but it's so needful to have that face-to-face. I
Right.
mean, with kids in general, but with ABA, like, you know, it's so much routine and so much consistency
Mhm.
and structure. And
Mhm.
so COVID is so anti-structure.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like throwing a bomb in the middle of, you
Mhm.
know, the
Mhm.
room and like, you know, a paint bomb, and the paint just splatters
Right.
everywhere. And
Right.
I can't even imagine
Yeah.
for the kids and those families how difficult that whole transition was, you know.
I mean, and
So, yeah.
I think one of the great things is that, you know, majority of the parents, a lot of the caregivers for these children and adults were definitely supportive. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
we came up with, okay, we're going to do a Zoom, but we're going to make it fun. You know, like we
Okay.
found
Okay.
creative games, we found creative tools that we can use through Zoom. And what we really learned was, even if we couldn't see the child or the adult that had the disability or the disorders, helping the caregivers and helping the parents was better than anything, because then they can get our tools and then get off of Zoom or get off of the phone and use those with their family members. So that was a great thing, just like how supportive they were, and just learning, you know, other ways to help. So how about you, Yolanda?
So for me, fortunately, I was already working from home. Like I said, like I don't live in California. I moved to North Carolina about a year ago. So I had already started that transition of doing telehealth. Not wanting to, I worked too darn hard for that California license. I was not giving it up.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, California is the most difficult state to get licensed in. Our standards are significantly different. Yeah, I wasn't giving that up. So I was already working from home. But for me, the most difficult transition is being 2,000 plus miles away from my family. My whole family is majority of my family is in California. So being away from them for so long was, well, because I planned to go home in April. And April was like, you know, the hot, like nobody go anywhere. The whole city is shutting down. Everybody's city is shutting down, you know, except for Florida, no shade, but everybody's shutting down. And so I was like, okay, well, let me push it back. You know, maybe June will be better. And still didn't feel comfortable in June. And by June, it was getting a lot darker as far as my space, because I am a single person. So I'm isolating by myself, except for going to the store. Like I wasn't going, other than going to the store and going for walks in my neighborhood, which is pretty, you know, I would walk while people were working or doing whatever they were doing out here in North Carolina. So not really seeing people while I'm walking. And I'm used to like going to the gym, you know, and going to the movies by myself. Like I'm used to going to restaurants, going out to eat, and all of that was kind of shut down. So I'm all by myself. And that started to weigh in on me. Like I started calling my family more, and, you know, that was working for a little bit. And then it was just like, no, like I need human interaction. Like I can't, I miss, you know, my family's very affectionate. So we hug a lot, we kiss on the cheek a lot, we hold hands, like we're just really affectionate, you know, without it being weird. So just really missing that time. And that, again, that face-to-face, it started to get really hard in June. And by the time June came, I was like, I have to go home in July. Like if I do not go home, and you know, by June, you know, with COVID and Floyd, I was like, if I don't go home, it's going to be really ugly here for me. And I don't want to risk that. So I did everything I needed to do, make sure I had my mask, make sure I had my gloves, make sure I had my sanitation stuff, and I went home. So
I'm glad you're able to get home, because we didn't want anything happening, you know, with you. I'm kind of curious, your clients that you're doing telehealth with, did any of them have any experiences, or were any of them experiencing anything related to COVID-19 or isolation that you actually were able to help them with? Or
So not so much the isolation piece, because I have a lot of clients. I work with adult clients. I have a lot of clients, majority with anxiety. So I have a lot of clients with social anxiety. So them being introverted, so they were kind of like, this is good for me. Like I don't have to ride the bus with people I don't like. I don't have to talk to coworkers. I don't have to meet new customers. I don't have to worry about what am I saying to my coworkers? Do they like me? All that stuff. It was a lot easier because they could be at home in their safe space, and their interactions with coworkers were different. I did have one client who at the end of her nursing program, and it's from how she explained it, they were expediting their nurses through. So like, you know, you graduate, we're sending you to a hospital, we need you, COVID's going on. And it was a struggle for her. She was already, you know, anxious about it. You know, even in just studying for exams and all of that stuff, and then having to acclimate to actually being in a hospital and what that means, and hospitals not having PPE. So all of that, like every day it was like, do I really want to, that in the beginning, she was like, I don't even know if I really want to be a nurse. Like I could literally not take my exam right now, you know, and forfeit the years that I've gained to get to this point. So even wrestling with that part, and then the part of actually like, okay, so every day you have to go to the hospital, you're going to feel anxious. And her anxiety was getting to the point where she wasn't taking any breaks. She wasn't eating. And I was like, okay, so, you know, anxiety, there's a back end, but there's also a front end, you know, let's stretch you out some more so you can be able to handle some of the stress.
Sure.
If you're not even taking care of your basic needs as far as eating and taking breaks, then you're already halfway defeated. So having to make plans with her on how she could take care of herself when she gets home and outside of her time of working, but also how she would take care of her basic needs as far as eating regularly, taking breaks in her car, even her safety, because there were some uprisings where she was, not necessarily by people that were in that community that she was serving, but outside of that community, you know, regarding the masks and, you know, just, you know, people out there that don't want to abide by what we're trying to do here as far as quarantine and keeping safe. So, you know, even that, like developing a plan for who are you going to call when you get to work to help walk you through so that you don't feel scared that they're going to attack you, who walks you to your car, all of those things. But it was tough for her. It was really tough for her.
I bet. And, you know, it's another thing too that we were discussing, and I think it's just important to address it again. It's like, as a therapist and as a social worker, when we're working, whether it's been at home right now or in the jail setting, you know, when we come home or when we're home, I know for me, one of another struggles that I've had during COVID is really like maximizing my time and what does the new schedule looks like for me. Because again, you know, it can be, you know, overwhelming being a therapist because you're hearing everybody's situations and problems and you have to help them, you know, unpack what they're going through, you know what I mean? And I've been working for, you know, 8 hours Monday through Friday, you know what I mean? The same with you ladies. But for me, it's like within all of that 8 hours, I'm still at home. So like, okay, in between, when is my daughter going to take her nap? When am I going to prepare her meals? When is she going to have her snack? Like she is pulling me because she wants me to play with her and I'm trying to do an assessment. Or, you know, I'm trying to do a therapy Zoom and my daughter's like, mama, you know? And like, she's 1.5 years, so she doesn't understand that even though I'm present, I can't get to her the way that I'm used to because I'm at home. So she doesn't understand, okay, yeah, that mom's home, but she's working. So that's been something that COVID has stripped me from. But on the flip side, what I've really gained is knowing how strong I am as a woman, as a professional, as a mom. Because, you know, before COVID, oh, I'm strong. Like, you know, I have this, I have my support system. But then when you get COVID in it and you're working from home 8 hours and your daughter, like support system is huge. And I'm so blessed for my mom and my brother. And, you know, I co-parent very well with my daughter's father that comes out and helps. So I think even though I really had to learn how to adapt by being a single mom and working, from home all day, like you said, Lucretia, I got to, I got a second job on top of it. I'm, working on, getting my license, starting my own business. So I've actually had more time because I'm not going out in the field. So I have other times where I can really work on me. And I'm like, I'm really a superwoman. Like, if I can do this, what else can I do? So I think even within that adversity, when you could really just see the positive things and how blessed you really are. I mean, I've been saving money more than ever during this COVID when people are getting money out of their savings to pay bills. So yeah, it's definitely been a struggle, but again, having that strong support system to really help is key. And reaching out, I think we were talking about this before, like, don't feel prideful. Don't feel like, oh, if I ask for help, that means I'm weak. No, by asking, that means, look, I am strong, but I'm still human and I still need your help.
Right.
Absolutely.
If I could speak to, I just want to speak to like a few things that happened where I work. In the big scheme of it, it made me like look at policy and how and why decisions are made. Not necessarily having all the answers of why decisions are made, but let me give you an example. So at work, because of, COVID-19, the pandemic and how it's affecting everyone, not only did
We're
it
gonna start
change,
calling her Coco.
you won't. So, not only did it affect like where people were housed, the courts closed down. So generally based on charges, people know approximate, I'm going to go to court. I'm going to show my face in court at this particular time, whether it's like 10 days from now or 15 days from now, whatever. So they kind of have an idea. But when the courts closed down, literally closed down, there were like a matter of weeks that there were no courts, period. There was no video courts. There were just no courts. So not only you have people who are in a detention facility who expect to get out or be seen by the judge at a certain time, you're saying, well, the court's not open. They goes, well, when are they going to open? Yeah, we don't know when they're going to open. So what are you saying based on my charges? How long do I have to be here? I don't know how long you have to be here. You just have to ride it out. So imagine the energy and the synergy that was taking place because of that. Because the courts were, I don't remember the exact time, but I would say something like 4 to 6 weeks. They were dark. There's nothing happening. Wow. And so then everything was backed up. So then when they started having court, it was a video court. And so that means that you have an inmate taken to a particular office space. Their public defender is communicating by video. The judge is on video. So that was a really, really slow process.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so on top of that, directives were given that charges that people would normally be brought in on, don't bring them all in. So there was more leniency. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, for
so
sure.
Things that people would normally get charged for and brought in, that was not happening, or it was reduced drastically. So you had, the jail went from where I work, it's like, it can house between 1,000 and 1,200. It went down to less than 6.
Okay. Wow, that is huge.
Right. And so I understand all the reasons why. You know what I mean? And I would say the decisions that were made helped to minimize or mitigate no major outbreaks where I work. However, it also made me start thinking like, well,
come on now,
we can handle business this way, and we can minimize arrest and jail. You know what I mean? It's like if we can really do this, then
and they're doing it.
It's possible.
Then shouldn't we do this? Just maybe start. You just start wondering about things. Once this is passed, will the numbers jump back up? And if so, why? In addition to that, many people are homeless. Many of the men are homeless. And our convention center here in San Diego opened up. It was housing homeless.
Wow.
Oh, was it?
Oh, my goodness. So
how awesome.
So when we're getting ready, when people are going to be released, you ask, well, do you have a place to go?
Right. Yeah.
It was really easy. in terms of you didn't really have to necessarily put together warm handoffs. They actually had places to go. So I don't know. I know you were, you're not here, Rolanda, but Marin said, I don't know how often you had the opportunity to go downtown San Diego or surrounding areas. There were minimum homeless
Wow.
on the street.
Wow, that's interesting.
Because they were, yeah.
But again, like, you brought a very good point up. It's like, the government wants us to think that they're very rigid, right? Like, we can only do certain things. But like you said, why is it all of a sudden everything, when it comes to the shelters or the homes or the residential
they're only rigid with the disenfranchised. Let's put that in there,
Exactly.
Just want to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just really interesting. And I'm like, so San Diego and its conservativeness and all the things that we're known for, when it comes down to it, to minimize and mitigate an outbreak or what have you, you can find places to house them. So it wasn't only just the convention center, they were, giving vouchers for rooms and hotels. So the numbers, it was like a ghost town.
Wow.
San Diego for a period of time. Now I'm seeing there's an increase, but it's still not at the level that it was. So just maybe start thinking about that.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So, no, I was just saying, thank you for bringing that up, just for our viewers to know as well, when it comes to, being a social worker, or like you said, you being a therapist in the jail, one big thing that we do is we house, right? So whether you're 18 or you're a family that's homeless living in your car, we really work with social services when it comes to, residential homes, or, if there's any beds open. I remember when I was in Washington, D.C., there was a whole street of at least 4 different hotels that the government would pay monthly for each room, or majority of the room, to house families, parents that have kids. And I've had several clients where they were on the waiting list for the DC housing for over 8 years, ladies, over 8 years. So what they would do is, and they probably have it here in San Diego, and it doesn't make any sense. And that's, again, as a social worker, we could be policymakers, right? Like, I went to a conference twice in DC at the Capitol, and they were sharing with us how much we need social workers, because we're on the front lines. We understand what's going on. We're working with the people, and there's such a huge disconnect with the congressmen and the congresswomen that are writing the bills, trying to pass them. Then you're not even understanding what's going on in the front to make these bills. And then you're wondering why it's getting dismantled. So you're making some valid points when it comes to why is it that when it's convenient for certain people, we have these availabilities, yet when it comes to our minority communities, it's an 8-year list, you know what I mean? Or an 8-year waiting list. And there's definitely a lot of work that we can do within our community and within our country.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of, like you said, what COVID brings, like there's parts that, were stripped and they were like, ooh, this is tight. This doesn't feel good. And then there's the parts like, that like, because we're home and we're forced to look at things that we don't want to look at, or that we, we're so busy, we didn't have time to look at. And like now, America is even more awake. Like, it's not just, well, we know what's going on, because we're out in the field, we see the homeless, we see the disenfranchised communities, we serve them, so on and so forth. But now it's like, well, you're going to see this too, because you're going to hear about it in the news. You're going to see it because your socializing now is on social media, which is going to be full of these images and these issues and these problems that come up. So, the hope is that, we're stripping away those things that don't serve us anymore as human beings. Like, let's just get to the bottom line. As human beings, the things that don't serve us, and the things that don't serve us as a nation, and things that don't serve us in our individual households and our individual selves, using this time to do that. Cause I mean, it's not easy. It wasn't easy, and it hasn't been easy, but I like to be glass half full. So looking at, that piece too of what's it stripping America of,
That's deep. And the great thing too, especially, in the generation before us, the ones that are about to graduate from high school, the ones that are going to college, I really feel like we're going to have such a bigger population of social workers, of therapists, when it comes to, you know, minorities, you know what I mean? Like congressmen, congresswomen, because they really see it. I mean, especially thank God for technology. So I really feel there's going to be a push and an increase in the Capitol, in the government, to make these changes. Because it's one thing to, you know, put it in a text or put it, you know, on Facebook, what's going on, but what are you doing in your community? And that's one thing I've really learned, is that there's so many people who will talk, but what are you doing to really making an impact? You know, it could be even something simple of, you know, going around and, I don't know, picking up maybe some elderly, you know, individuals from your family or a close friend that know that they're healthy, and you're going to take them to vote. You know what I mean? Or look, if you're not working right now, there's so much you can do to empower people to stay positive. And it's really just, it really goes back to, how are you increasing your ability to become a better person mentally, emotionally, as well as physically?
Marissa, I hope we see more social workers and policymakers, you know, that'd be fantastic. One thing that I've seen that's definitely coming out of this is a lot more creatives. You know, we talked about becoming resourceful and blowing off our little bag of skills, whether we're doing our own hair or eyebrows and what have you. But how about people who are finding ways to make ends meet and above that? You know, creatives. I mean, look, I don't know how many people are on Black San Diego, but there's a lot of people cooking some delicious meals. I mean, I'm seeing crab, I'm seeing pastries, I'm seeing, and I don't know. I know many people they'll post something and then they'll sell out. So that must be a good thing, right? So I mean, just the food alone, or you know, doing things out of their home, whatever services, bartering services, and what have you. But I think that we're going to see a lot of creatives out of this. You know, a lot of creatives, you know, going on.
And that just to piggyback what you were saying, Lucretia, is a lot of individuals that are going to be business owners. Like I know several in my pocket of the world that are in the making of having their own business. And again, because God allowed us just to stop and pause and stop being so busy, God's like, okay, let me really tap into your purpose. Let me tap into your creative side. Let me really tap into your gifts and talents, so that when everything's done, you're not going to look back a year later like, dang, what did I do with myself besides just sitting and watching TV all day? Like, there's so much you can really tap into. And I'm really excited just to see, you know, all the great things are going to be coming out of this for the people that want to make a change. Because again, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to actually put one foot before the other and do some great change in this world, and even in the little pocket of where you're at.
Yeah. And I want to say even change in learning how to slow down and rest. Because I know for me, I tend to get into, like, before COVID. Well, actually, when I lived in San Diego, I'll say that. Once I moved out here, I don't know if in my head I was just like, it's the South, slow down. But in San Diego, I had so many moments when I was like, oh my gosh, God, slow my life down. Slow my life down. I'm waking up, going to work, going to the second job, going to church, helping people with their kids. Like, it was just go, 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 go. And, you know, learning how to, like, slow down. What do I do that is meaningful for me? What is the meaningful work for me, or the meaningful positioning for me? You know, we talked about repositioning. What is meaningful for me? Is it meaningful for me to spend XYZ money on nails? I mean, obviously it's not, because I am nailless. So, I mean, you know, kind of going about those things like, this is, how important is this? Is it more important for me to save money so that I can invest? Is it more important for me to, or is it more important for me to, and if it's more important for me to get my nails done, then all be it, you know, no judgment there. But if it's not, and you're trying to make moves, then, you know, weighing that out. And it doesn't have to be like, I need to come out of this COVID with 5 businesses. No, you know, tune in with yourself, tune in with your God, pray about it. What is
Yeah.
it that God is allowing me in this position? Do I need to rest? Do I need to put up boundaries for my space because my space is sacred?
Yeah.
All of those things.
Yeah. I think, well, Lana, what you're talking about, what comes to my mind is giving myself permission, whatever that looks like. So giving
I
myself
love that
permission,
phrase.
yeah, to just be. I
Mhm.
know for me, a couple of things I've really, embraced is me and my daughter looking on YouTube and finding, vegan or vegetarian recipes. I am not vegan or vegetarian, but I happen to like, to eat healthy when I can. And I just like good food. And so, looking for recipes and actually making it at home and getting creative. Like, what do we have in our kitchen?
Oh, it's
And
fun.
giving
Yeah.
ourselves high fives because we didn't waste a lot of food. We put some stuff together,
That's true.
we get pumped about that. Watching
Mhm.
some movies with my daughter that I happen to be very fond of, that now she's coming of age. I'm like, okay, we can sit down and talk about this or watch this.
Okay.
That's been a blast. It's been an
Oh,
Yes.
absolute blast, and it's just, it's the whole thing about permission. And I have slowed down. For me, I'm not a loner. I mean, I like being out, but I can really I like reading books a lot.
Mhm.
Listening to books. So I'll always appreciate that. But on the weekend, sometimes I would think, ooh, I need to get out and do X, Y, and Z, and,
Mhm.
get my daughter some sunlight and what have you, and we do some of that, in the car riding around, but we've also just put more time in our home, fixing up our home and just spending time
Yeah.
together. And it's been very appreciated.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm
One,
so appreciative your color scheme in the back, Lucretia. I'm like, oh, those oranges and yellows. I
Oh, thank
love
you.
oranges and yellows.
Thank you.
yeah, that's really pretty. One quick thing that I've really just been focusing on with myself is just really about stronger relationships. So just like really just connecting with people I haven't connected with in a while, whether it's, my family, friends in DC, or even just family members that live in, just different cities, and really just tapping into not even making, because I've always had good relationships, but in the sense of weeding out what's healthy for me and what's not healthy for me. And one key thing that you said, Walanda, is boundaries. Like if I know whether you're a family or a friend and you're not bringing peace in my life, you're not, giving me, actually not even giving me, but that relationship isn't mutual and it's not going back and forth and it's toxic, I'm good. Because at the same time, it's like, I can only, like you said, you have to keep your circle tight. And you have to understand that if you see some nuances that are like, what, this isn't sounding right, this doesn't really, it's fitting in my, it's not sitting well in my spirit, then I'm gonna let it go. And I'm okay with that, because relationships are gonna change. There's people that are gonna be with you at the top and the ones that are not. And I'm finally realizing that is okay,
Wow.
because at the end of the day, you have to keep your peace with yourself.
Absolutely. It kind of goes back to that permission. I love that. Like
Yep.
I talk to my clients about that. Like you have the option to give yourself permission for this. Now, I just want to let you know where the power lies. It doesn't lie with me. Please don't make me responsible for for making your anxiety go away, because the ultimate person is going to be the choices that you make.
Absolutely.
So one of the things we talked about offline was the social. You talked about tightening your circle. And it's interesting. I had a chance, and this is probably a little bit unrelated, but we have, I'm a part of a church that does something called Love Week. And so we would, in very limited spaces, have opportunities to serve the communities here in North Carolina, or wherever the multiple locations, wherever you're at. Okay. And so I remember how funny it is, because we would take pictures after our service, and I would be like, and they would say cheese, and I'm like, we all got masks on, like, how do you cheese? Right. So those social things that you're used to doing,
right.
Even even when I'm walking around my neighborhood, or I'm going to the store, and people want to say hi, and usually I smile. I don't wave at people. So even like having to learn how to say hi, or to acknowledge without like a smile is like, okay, so do I now I find myself having to say like wave or something or do a head nod, where before it was like, oh, I would just smile. Like, they're not gonna see that.
Yeah, those social cues.
Very important. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And how different that is. And it's so funny. And just I guess to kind of tie into that was, I had a client that started dating somebody during COVID, and the guy they went on a few dates, and he wasn't touching her, like wasn't holding her hand, or like trying to like put his arm around her, wouldn't kiss her, and she was like, so I don't know if he likes me or not, because he's showing up, but he's not like, and I'm like, you do remember we're in COVID, aka Coco. Like, we're in COVID right now. Like, he might have a little bit of anxiety about touching and stuff like that. And she was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I'm like,
oh wow.
I would have some anxiety. I mean, you might not have some anxiety, but I mean, let's look at other ways that he is showing you interest or communicating that to you, like body cues, showing up and things like that. So that just the social piece that you were talking about, Maurice, just made me think about all of that, because that's how my brain works. It just goes everywhere.
I wonder if there's an increase on dating online.
I was going to ask the same thing.
You know what I mean? And like actually using Zoom as a time to get to know somebody. And I think that's even a better way, because you have less distractions, and it really can weed out. If you're really feeling me, like we're talking, getting to know me, we're going to continue this Zoom. You know what I mean? Because there's no other stuff connected to seeing somebody in person.
No, I was going to ask the same thing. And I really wish some people would weigh in on this, and saying like, is it more socially acceptable now, or, to date online? You know what I mean? Or, has there been an increase of that? That's probably something I should have looked up to see if there's been an increase.
I would guess that there has been, but I remember seeing, because, when you're on Hulu, they show those commercials that you don't want to see and you can't fast forward through. But I remember seeing a couple about dating, either a Match or eHarmony or anything like that, and they would show people cooking together. So like you decide on the meal, and they cook one part.
I haven't noticed.
You guys cook the same meal, and then you have like a little video of you guys eating it together. And I'm like, oh, that's so cute.
I haven't seen one of those, really.
I'm like, it's very different.
Okay.
But it's cute. It has to be a short meal, because you can't cook all day. I mean, you can't be on Zoom all day, but yeah, I thought that was cute.
Creative though. That is so creative. That's neat.
That is creative. I wonder. And just speaking of masks, have you guys found just personally, has it been more challenging to pick up on social cues? I know for me, what I found myself doing, sometimes when I'm thinking or whatever, I frown up here, but I'm not mad. It's just thinking, and I know people kind of look at me. Are you okay, or what have you? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm like, oh, and so I find myself going like this a lot, just to make sure, that this reflects what's going on down here. So I don't know.
For me, if I'm passing somebody, knowing, because I love to smile too, so knowing that I can't smile, what I've been doing is like raising my eyebrows, like if somebody's passing me.
Okay.
like I see you.
Right.
So like, like a little nod, because like you have to be creative, because so many times like, is he mad or is she mad? Because like you say, if you're in your head, you're frowning. So I'm like, if you do a little eyebrow nod,
Hey, ladies, speaking about up here, not only am I trying to be cognizant of the creases, when I'm drawing on these eyebrows and making sure they reflect, like, you heard of angry brows, right? Like really dark. So I'm trying to make sure, I'm like, ooh, I need to lighten these up just a little bit. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's real, because I'm like, the people only see me from here on up. So
or only doing your makeup, like I still do, like depending on where I'm going, I'll still do a full makeup if I'm going out to dinner or whatever. Yeah, because eventually I'm gonna take it off if it's like out to dinner or to my family or a close friend's house.
Right.
But again, like especially like in the beginning, I would always I love wearing lip gloss. So sometimes I still forget and I put the mask on, and then I'm like this because it's like it's sticky, then there's lint on my lips, and I'm like,
girl.
Or it's like, you know,
Girl,
a makeup smudge here because my mask is on. And
Oh,
see,
God.
and,
it is
yeah,
real.
it
It
is.
is real. I
And
went
of
out.
course, men, they don't have to deal with none of that.
Okay.
What are you gonna do? Not shave? Like,
Right. No one's gonna
But
see me with this mask on.
And the
Right.
funny thing is, I was telling Lucretia about an incident that I had, like where I was engaging with a guy. I wasn't sure. I'm so bad at like, is this person hitting on me or not? I'm like, oh, we're just having conversation. Um, but when we walked out the store at the same time and he kind of walked to my car, and I am a teeth person. Like
mm,
God has blessed me with beautiful straight teeth, no braces. That's a blessing. I know I'm privileged, but I am a teeth person. And the mask, like, I don't know if you're breastfeeding. I don't know if you got one tooth going this way or this way.
good.
So like
That's
now,
good.
like right now, I'm like anti, like I don't.
You're not even looking. Like,
Or if I can't see all of it and see this
Yeah,
part,
yeah. No, you made some
head down. I'm on the phone. I'm listening to my music.
oh my God.
Oh, that's some good points though. It's so true.
That mask and like that makeup, I applaud you, Mauricia, for being able to still do your makeup because that
It's only rare.
irritates me. But it still irritates me because your mask, like my masks are washable, but the inside is white. So
Right.
even like seeing my lipstick or my lip, even this little cheesy little chapstick, the peak shows up on the
Right.
mask, and I'm annoyed. Like I gotta wash this again.
Right. Yeah. What's really going on here?
Right. So all of that. So
I know that you have some tips soon.
yes,
Over.
we are ready to share.
Let me see.
So let's see, Lucretia or Rolanda, you all can go first if you
Okay.
would like. I'm gonna pull that up. We definitely have
So
some really good. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I know I talked about very faintly a little bit of my sadness and feelings of depression and being separated from my family. So I definitely want to talk about some, if you have a mental health challenge or a mental health diagnosis, there's so many platforms out there that are offering discounted mental health if you're not already linked to a clinician. Pretty much everybody's doing telehealth right now. There's an echo, so I don't know if that's me, but is that me? You guys hear the echo, or is it just me?
Oh, you're good.
Okay, so I keep talking. But there's so many avenues out there for discounted mental health, and even for free mental health. So just, you can Google free mental health. Sometimes, I know I'll share if I hear of different services, and mainly most of my connections are in California. So, but Black Therapy for Black Girls.
Okay.
I know sometimes they offer free mental health. And there's Open Path, there's a number of resources out there, but if you're being treated for any mental health condition, please make sure that you're continuing to maintain and stay on top of that. The added the add addition of COVID is definitely a challenge. If you're also being treated for drug and alcohol disorder, the COVID outbreak will definitely lead to increased anxiety. So it makes you even more susceptible to wanting to treat those symptoms with substance use. So just being aware of that. It's higher risk of relapse, higher risk of use. And then, mainly just generic things to do. Like I talked about, keeping in touch with loved ones, making sure that, you're still reaching out. And if you can't get to them physically, calling them, FaceTiming, sometimes seeing their faces. We can go old school. We can write letters.
Yeah.
But any of those things would definitely help. And of course, if you're receiving medication, please, please, please stay on top of your medication. Please do not not self-diagnose, but please don't just titrate because you're feeling better, or you're able to get out a little bit more, so you're feeling like your symptoms aren't there, please consult. Please consult with your physician or whoever's treating you and prescribing that medication to you.
Awesome.
If I can add one thing to that, Yolanda, I think another thing when it comes to our mental and emotional health, and again, we discussed this previously, is really monitoring your like how much news you're getting.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're treating in your head, because that will affect your stress. That's going to affect your anxiety. That's going to affect you being worried all the time. And yes, I get it. Yes, we need to watch the news. We need to understand what's going on. But if you're at home and you're watching it all day, every day, it's toxic. Point blank. If you're talking about it all day, every day, it's toxic. Like, of course, you have to get it out. I understand that. You got to vent. You got to talk about it, which is key, right? But it's very important when it comes to your mind and the stability to take a break, walk away from it. You have to, watch some funny movies. I'm sorry, I just had to
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Some tips that some young adults and adults period can use. I think we kind of talked about them, 5 moments of stillness. And so, that may look different for many different people. Some people it's meditation. It might even be exercising, but it's just kind of you doing you. I know for me, I like reading, in particular audiobooks. And that is just something I truly, truly enjoy. So I can listen to an audiobook while I'm taking a bubble bath, while I'm cooking, while I'm cleaning. And it just kind of takes me away, and it allows me to go wherever I want to go within that book. And so that's important. So wherever stillness looks like for you, routines and schedules. For those of us who are still working outside of work, like my routine didn't change too much. And so I'm still getting up at a certain time, getting dressed and all those things that come along with that. But I think even more so for people who are finding themselves working from home or without jobs, find some routine, whatever that might look like. So, if that's getting up and making yourself some tea or some coffee or having some breakfast with loved ones, find some sort of routine. And like you guys were talking about, there's so much information that's coming through media, whether it's TV, for me, it's cell phone, you got to get information, but how about look for some real news, some real information, because there's a lot of stuff out there that people are just using to scare you, or just just very negative things. Practice gratitude, we
so true.
Share some of those things right now. It's like, yes, I have to go into work, but guess what? I'm gainfully employed and I am blessed, very blessed, and I don't take that for granted, how about, I have a home and I can pay my bills. My child has a safe place. I have loved ones to call on to help, sow into my home, my child, and whatever whatever we may need and she may need. I'm saving money because I'm cooking at home. I'm learning new recipes. My daughter is increasing her menu. You know what I mean? She's doing some things, feeling good about it at a much faster pace as she would have been doing had she not been as home as much as she has been. But yeah, so those are some of the things, we can do as adults.
That's awesome. So what I'm going to be discussing just very, very briefly is for parents that have children at home during COVID, and what, just some suggestions that can help is, one thing is, as a parent, or if anybody's living in the home, if you're stressed and you're feeling anxious, 9 out of 10, your child's going to feel that too. And it's very important to demonstrate, to role play, to share, and just number one, teach your child how to manage their anxiety, how to manage their own stress of confusion, of fear. And some ways that you can do that to help your child is teaching them how to journal, and it doesn't have to be a full page, but maybe just a couple words, how they feel, jot it out on paper, as well as teaching them how to maybe write a poem about how their day went. Again, we're talking about pulling the artiste out of them, as well as playing. I know when I was doing play therapy, a lot of children aren't good with expressing themselves verbally. So where and how they express themselves majority of the time is through play. And you could just allow your child to lead the play, and that can even show you what your child is going through. So again, it's important to model the behavior of how to minimize your anxiety and your stress, because your child's always looking at you. Like what they're doing, what they're saying is literally what you're doing in your home. And when we think that they're not looking, they are. So again, it's very important to pull and to look outside of yourself, because it's like, okay, if I'm, always arguing, I'm always fighting because I'm so stressed out and I'm not in my right mind, imagine how your 5-year-old is trying to process everything that's going on in the world. Another thing too is helping with not allowing your child to have a lot of screen time throughout the day. And of course, especially now they're back on, probably distance learning. But, really just pull them away from playing video games all day or watching movies all day. And you can help by, having family time, whether that's game night, family night of watching a movie together, creating puzzle or completing puzzles, baking, like you were sharing with us, Lucretia. And just really just spending that time as a family doing something, even if it's just wearing a mask and walking at the beach or going out into the mountains and doing a hike. So it's really important, just to show them how to manage their own stress. Absolutely. And then lastly, again, maintaining a familiar routine and schedule for your child is really important, because again, every child feels safe, feels secure when they have that routine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, we're coming to the end, and we really want to thank everybody who tuned in with us this hour. And for those who will tune in at a later time, we hope that we've said and or shared something that resonates with you, maybe something that made you laugh, maybe something that made you consider patting yourself on the back, and maybe some things you might want to look into. But in addition to what we said, we don't want you to use what we said as any type of form of therapy, because this is not therapy, this is sharing. And so if you find yourself or a loved one in need of services, I just want to share some numbers that you might be able to look into. And Walanda will put this information also on Facebook, just in case you don't get it. So if you find yourself crises, we have a 24-hour crises. There is a 24-hour crises center call hotline, and it's at 800-273-TALK. Again, that's 800-273-TALK. And then there's a substance abuse and mental health services administration number, and that's 800-662-HELP. Again, that's 800-662-HELP. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, that's 800-273-8255. And the last number I'll share is the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and that number is 800-799-7233. Again, that's 800-799-7233.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, once again for tuning in. We can't wait for next time. So join us as we continue to unpack and just have fun and educate others. Thank you.
All right. You guys have a good evening.
Have a great week.